thank you so much for joining me, Nick. It's great to talk to you. I've heard a lot about you because we had Andy Brooke on the podcast a little while ago, who is, of course, your bandmate in the Middlenight Men. You're playing at the Quo convention, which on the face of it looks odd if you don't know the background. Give us some background on the Middlenight Men.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll try and keep a 20-year story condensed into a minute or so. So I went to music college back in '99 with someone you might know called Leon Cave, and so we started out as a band together back in '99 or 2000 in a band called Scar Wars. So we're still doing it at the moment. We've got some gigs this year, in fact. So it's a 22, 23 year period working with him. And we've played in a lot of bands together. We played in one called Obscura, in the Crane Brothers, tons. And then so I'd always known him. And then with Andy, he'd been recording some of my previous bands. One being a band called The Role Models, who I've got kind of a long-standing relationship with Rags. We're doing a little tour this year as well, but Andy was always our go-to guy for recording. And so I was playing in a band called Duncan Reid and the Big Heads. Now, Duncan Reid was in a band in the 70s called The Boys, and they were just tremendous power pop writers. They should have been much bigger than they were. They were massive in '77 and '78, and they're still big around the world today. But in the UK, they didn't go that massive in later years. But he was an incredible songwriter, Duncan Reid, and I was on a tour in Argentina with him a few years ago, and it was on a really long plane ride back, and he was saying, you've got enough stories, even just from this tour alone, that you could write a book or you could write an album. So, don't be ridiculous. I can't write. I tried to write a song once when I was 18 and it was awful, so I never tried again. But then on this train, on this plane ride on the way home, I wrote one song. I was like, you know what? Maybe this is all right. I won't tell anyone I'm writing anything, but I'm going to need some help. And there's two people I know I'm going to need to help me because I can play everything other than drums. So I'm going to give Leon a call. And so I gave Leon a call, and eventually a year later sent him the demos, and he really liked it. And I knew I wanted Andy to record it as well, just because it was the safety net of recording with someone who wasn't going to laugh at me if it was rubbish. So it was this very self-contained thing. And I wasn't planning on really doing anything with it. I'd maybe make some CDs, sell one to my mum or something. And then what turned out quite quickly was that there seemed to be a real calling for the album in the musical fan groups I was already a part of. So people like the Wild Hearts and Terrorvision and people more in the kind of current UK underground rock scene. And so we realised we were going to have to gig it then as well. It's like, okay, well, I don't do things by halves. Let's get 10 people. Let's have trumpet, saxophone, five vocalists. We'll have 4 guitarists. The reason we've got 4 guitarists, let you in on a secret, I can't say no. And people kept on saying, no, can I play guitar? Because Andy was supposed to play keyboards to begin with. He's like, actually, I'd quite like to play guitar. It's like, yeah, go and play guitar. And then more and more people came into the creative fold. It became a real big interactive media driven thing in terms of the videos we produce as well. So one of the girls, Heidi, who helped us with a lot of the videos early on, it's like, you might as well play guitar as well. Anyone else want to play guitar? So we've got 4 guitarists now. And so this brings us up to now. What started as a very small project that was just kind of basically me living out my musical creative fantasies, because there wasn't a band where you could say, oh, that sounds like Ben Folds 5 and the Beach Boys and McFly and Meatloaf and Status Quo and Alice Cooper all rolled into one. I'm going to have to make it myself, and I'll be the only person who listens to it. Brings us to now, and we've got a 10-piece band about to come and rock your socks off at the Quo convention.
Well, the amount of musicians, I think, to match the record, I mean, the record is huge. That is a massive sound that you've got going on there on issue number 1. That's his name, isn't it? I asked the Echo for it this morning, and it was like issue number 1. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, so what you'll probably seen if you've seen the artwork. So it's the idea of this band was I didn't want people to feel obliged to stay for longer than they wanted. So it was like, you know what can we model it on? Look at the Marvel universe. You might have a Marvel movie that has everyone in it, like the Avengers, and then they'll go and do their own projects, and we can congratulate and advertise their own projects as much as possible. They don't need to feel pressured to come into the next gig or the next album. So then it kind of made sense to have this sort of comic book theme, because each person could have the character that could get replaced from album to album if, for instance, they were going on a worldwide tour with Status Quo. And so we did this whole comic book approach, which then when it came to, we'd got the artwork done, and it was just basically a comic book front cover. It's like, right, what are we going to call it? Okay, well, it's our first record, so it is basically issue 1. So it's basically down to that. It's wanting people to feel that they always belong in this, no matter, even if their other responsibilities take them elsewhere.
Well, I don't think the convention would have seen anything like this before, because it's just like you say, there's so many people on the stage and you're all dressed up in costume, and it's a visual spectacle as well as an audio one. Were you surprised to get invited?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's always going to be a bit of a benefit to have Leon in playing in the band, for sure. I mean, I hadn't heard loads of about the convention before, but I know, for instance, that he'd been playing with Jim Kirkpatrick, and that had he played a previous Quo convention? Did he play the last one?
I want to say, well, he was a visitor, I think.
He was a visitor. Okay, got you. I think I might be getting confused with the Great British Rock Festival that we've also been invited to. But in terms of the Quo convention, it is something we wanted to do, for sure. I'm not very good at asking for things. I should be better. I should be going and asking all the promoters and all the bookers and all the managers, can you give us stuff? So it's something we silently wanted to do in the background. And so, yeah, when we got asked to do it, I was really happy. Did I expect to get invited? I never expect anything, to be honest. So it's more happy than anything else.
So I feel like with going, if you end up talking to anybody, they might ask you some obvious questions, and maybe it's best to get them out of the way now. And then if you struggle in any way, you can think about...
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. So what's your favorite Quo album?
Oh my God, don't do this. Right, you have to tell me what my favorite Quo album. Can I switch that and say what my favorite Quo song is?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that next, so yeah.
Okay, so I've been listening loads to a song called Long Legged Linda, which I'd never heard before this year. And Leon was like, you should have a listen to this, because it sounds, it's got brass, it's got female vocals in. And I've got that on repeat at the moment. So maybe you have to tell me what album that's off, and that can be my favorite album.
Well, it's funny. That is If You Can't Stand the Heat from 1978. And that was a very big shift in the sound. They started adding horn sections, there were backing singers. And actually, listening to the Middlenight Men and issue number 1, I can see that there is some similarity with that big sound.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I'd ever heard that big sound from Quo before. And it's really interesting because I went to see Francis's book tour a couple of years ago. And, there with my notepad, getting ready to steal some great ideas. And he started giving me, telling him about how his writing style, he used to always start from that sort of Irish jig kind of bass with bass point with the drums, etc. So I actually went home and I wrote a song on that kind of blueprint, starting from that kind of drum pattern, layered the horns on, layered the female vocals on as well. And although it's in many ways, it's completely different to Long-Legged Linda. You can still hear that bombastic influence from that. So yeah, thank you, Sir Rossi, for the help there. So yeah, so that's my favourite song. And so what's it called? I'm gonna make a note of this.
It's called "If You Can't Stand the Heat."
If You Can't Stand the Heat. Right,
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay, done.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a controversial one because obviously it's a slight deviation in sound, but the points that you've made there, I think, are valid. I quite like that album because of that big sound. That's great. Have you seen Quo live?
Yes, I have. I mean, however big a band that my friends are in, whether they're playing to 100,000 people or 10 people, I get such a kick out of going and watching them on stage. So I've managed to see Quo quite a lot since Leon joined. Probably the highlight is going to be watching them at Hyde Park as well. So because me and Andy both went down to that together, so it was really nice to watch them do their thing. I started becoming friends with Richie as well. So it was really nice to watch him there too. So I went to see him there. I've seen him at a couple of those sort of country house type affairs as well. Maybe the Albert Hall. Is that where Francis did that acoustic one with Hannah Rickard? I went to see that at some point as well. So yeah, I feel I'm earning my stripes in terms of getting to the shows.
And of course, you have a unique perspective because you've been in a band and you're in a band with Leon. What's he like to work with?
Oh God, he's so annoying, man. He can play anything. It's frustrating because it's like, you know what? Okay, you play the drums and you're great at it, and then one day, not so much now, but certainly before, he'd be like, oh, I think my main instrument's guitar, actually. I mean, he'll just play guitar just effortlessly. It's really nice. I've said to him in the past, because I'm one of the bands I play in, it's a band called Terrorvision that I play the trumpet in. And it's like, you are not picking up a trumpet. You've got to leave me with one thing that I'm better at than you. But we approach things very, very similarly in terms that, preparation is the key. Rehearsals aren't a space to be learning how to play a song, learning a structure. You come in, you've done your homework, you know it, and you can just, that's a rehearsal's more about refining things. Because of that, we don't rehearse an awful lot. In fact, I think in the Middlenight Men, we've probably only had 2 full band rehearsals ever. We've obviously got a couple coming up before the Quo convention. We're going to learn a couple more as well. We might throw in a couple of surprises too. But yeah, he's a consummate professional, and this is why I've been in bands with him for 22 years.
Any hints as to what those surprises will be?
I don't know. He might be annoyed if I say. So I reckon we'll probably try and find something from that era, though, you're talking about in terms of that change of sound, and we might try and find a song from that era. So yeah, that'd be cool. But we're really looking forward to it because we're going to. It's obviously Leon's birthday on the Saturday of the Quo convention, so we're all coming down probably for the whole thing. Actually, for half of us will come down for it. So obviously we're playing on the Sunday night, so we've got to be a little bit well behaved, which is going to be tricky being our lad's birthday. But yeah, so I'm sure there'll be surprises, but even I don't know what they are. So we'll all find out together.
And I'm guessing, although you've been in many bands and you've played possibly hundreds of gigs, right?
Yeah.
Have you played in Butlins before?
Loads, actually. Loads. And in fact, I think me and Leon might have played Butlins, and all with Bob, who plays a bass in the Middlenight Men. We did a show for Butlins, which was one of his revival weekenders when we were playing in Scar Wars, and we supported Chesney Hawkes, and we or he supported us, perhaps. I think maybe Chesney supported us and we supported some Madonna tribute. So that was my first introduction to Butlins. But then Butlins they host a lot of the Hard Rock Hell events, and they also do a lot of the like the punk festivals. So I've played Minehead and Skegness an awful lot. Most recently, we've played one of them at the back end of last year, supporting Stiff Little Fingers, and in my other band Terrorvision, we headlined Hard Rock Hell I think again at the end of last year, and possibly is it Minehead for Quo Convention or is it
Yes.
Skegness? Minehead. Yeah, so we played with Minehead. I'll tell you what, the thing that really blew me away about Butlins, because if you've never been to a Butlins weekend or a Butlins convention or anything, you have this preconception that, oh, it's a holiday park. They don't know what they're doing. You go and watch a show and it's just going to be a really awful show with 4 lights shining down and a really small PA system. My gosh, they are so geared up to put on these weekends. It's so good. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with the 10 a.m. sound checks, but, like, fair play to them. They're extremely professional. The kit's awesome. The monitoring's great. The lights are great. So whereas previously, maybe when I'd never played Butlins before, I might have turned my nose up at that sort of venue. It's awesome, and I really enjoy playing them, and they look after you so well.
Well, I, for one, can't wait to see you, because I'm coming over to Minehead. I've never been to the convention before, so I'll be in the same situation as you, where it's all new, which is amazing. For those that perhaps will think, well, I don't know who that is, and I might use this as an opportunity to go and do something else or go to the bar or whatever. Why do you think... I have to word this really carefully.
No, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, how would you sell it to Quo fans? Why should they? This sounds really harsh. Why should they see you?
Why should they care? Why bother, right? Yeah, I mean, if you go and have a look at some of our videos online, you will see the amount of effort we put into every single aspect of this band. Whether it's the costumes and the makeup, whether it's the videos we produce, whether it's our stage show, or the songs themselves. I started this band with one main thing in mind, and it was, there are a lot of people who are much better qualified, either through experience or through their gift of literature, that can pour out poetry via songs about really serious things. And these serious things are much more serious than anything that I would ever write. They're better at it and just more qualified to do it. I wanted to give a method of escapism. So no matter what is happening in the world, in our personal lives, I wanted to provide smiles, a little ray of sunshine. So for anyone who just wants to end up with a smile on their faces through actually enjoying the show, or simply being, what on earth have I just watched? Then I would recommend coming down to see us. We've got 6 people in our band, 14 people in the crew, and everyone, even the people behind the scenes, they bring their own creative input into it. And you can imagine that many creative minds, like really talented creative minds, what we can put together and what we can show. So you can expect, if you like 5-part harmonies, if you like your Quo type riffs, if you like, costumes and stupidness, just come and watch us, and I really promise we'll blow you away.
Well sold.
Are you coming?
Yeah. Definitely. I would not miss it, because it's a great album. I recommend people checking it out, and obviously the chance to see it live is one not to miss. Obviously before then you're going to be playing gigs. Have you got anything coming up that people can perhaps get a taste of?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our first main stage festival show in a few weeks, actually, at a festival called Call of the Wild in Lincolnshire Showground. We're really excited for it. I've basically said, keep our fee and give us pyrotechnics. So we're going for like Motley Crue 1987 at 4:00 in the afternoon there. So we're really looking forward for that. But because we haven't managed to rehearse for a long time or do a show since December, we've got a rehearsal in a couple of weeks, and then we're going to do a warm-up show in London. So we've teamed up with this brewery called Signature Brew in Black Horse Road, and they're basically giving us the venue for free. They're hiring extra staging to accommodate our large band and extra PA. We're not charging for tickets. We're offering the chance to donate for the Red Cross in the Ukraine instead. And we're going to use it as a chance to maybe maybe play a couple of issue 2 songs that no one will have ever heard. We'll have to see how the rehearsal goes before we make that final decision. And if we know what we're going to do for the Quo convention by then, we might drop that in as well. So that's on the 20th of May on the Friday. Free entry in a bar, in a brewery. What more do you want? And then we've got the Quo convention, and then we've got the Great British Rock and Blues Festival next January as well. So we're taking it a little bit easier this year because we've got issue 2 to write. So we're not going to have loads of gigs. We'll try and do a small headline tour in 2023. So not many opportunities to come and watch us. So yeah, hopefully see people at one of them.
Have you got a date in mind for the second album?
It's funny because I felt no pressure on issue 1 because there was no pressure. No one knew I was writing it. We released issue 1. We straight away got a publishing deal. Part of that publishing deal is you got to release another album in 2 years. So really, I'm supposed to release it by February, but I think what I'd be really annoyed about is if I rushed it. We've got 10 demos done, actually 11 demos, because our good friend Leon has also done one as well. So we could go and perfect those and record them, but I want to write another 4 or 5. Get in the studio at the end of this year, and then so maybe next summer. But we're already doing the creative side of it because we're filming a video in a couple of weeks for a song we haven't even written yet. We haven't finished writing it, so it's going to be quite interesting. So we're going off to Wales. Luckily, it's a narrative piece, so you don't actually have to lip sync to it, but that's going to be incredibly exciting. That's the first real issue 2 sort of thing that people are probably going to see. It's probably going to be the first album for anyone who's a fan of the DC movies as well. And anyone who's seen the recent film The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix in it, we've actually got one of the main supporting cast there to be our lead actor in it as well. So we're bringing a little taste of Hollywood into issue 2 as well. So we want it to be right. We don't want to rush it.
So I guess when the track isn't finalized, you must have to shoot a lot of B-roll for that video in order to account for timings that perhaps you didn't think of. And
yeah, definitely. So in fact, I've got my director coming around this evening, and what we'll probably do is we'll probably storyboard 3 similar but slightly different storylines, because at the moment we've got it's really a really interesting way of doing it, actually. So we've got a demo of what we think the song is probably more or less going to be like. I'm not keen on the first minute, so we might throw it away and bring something in. But we've got a rough structure to the progression of the song lyrically. So we kind of know what we're going to do. But one of the things when you're doing a narrative with no like spoken word, and what we're trying to do is quite an introverted piece as well, you've got to be careful what can come across on camera, because you might have this great idea of what's going on this person's thinking this, and it's really deep and meaningful. Someone watching it has no idea that's what they're thinking. So we're gonna shoot. You're right. We're gonna shoot quite a bit of B-roll, or we're just gonna shoot quite a little, like a few different versions of the storyline. So we go away for 2 days into the woods in Wales, and we'll see what comes out at the end of it. Hopefully, we all do.
Well, there's great attention to detail, and your videos are up on YouTube. You've got a website as well. If people wanted to find out more about the Middlenight Men and maybe yourself as well, where would they need to go? Yeah,
so if someone wanted to read a little bit more about us and maybe catch some of our videos, the website is normally the best place. So it's themiddlenightmen.com. Occasionally I fall a little behind updating gig lists like anyone else does who has to maintain something that isn't a Facebook page. But yeah, so that's a good place. But also, I mean, we're so proud of our videos. So I'd say if you search for Middlenight Men on Facebook and go and scour through our videos, or likewise on YouTube, there's some stuff which you wouldn't find on the website. So for instance, we took over a massive church and did a really cool, still in all our makeup, we did a really cool acoustic gig down there as well, which I'm really proud of. So yeah, it's for videos. You've got to watch it, not just listen to it, I reckon, to get the full imagery behind it.
My goodness, that acoustic gig, the acoustics in that place, you could hear it.
It was incredible. It was so much fun. and like so I'm a real keen videographer. I do all the videos myself with my friend Joe, who's the director. And for that show, we went and hired a £20,000 lens as well. So we had this amazing anamorphic lens that we were using for the majority of the shots. And yeah, the acoustics, it was stunning. And you know what? The church it was a church in Carshalton. And All Saints Church, I think it was, and they didn't even charge us at all. They were grateful for us going and using what they saw as a community space for something that could, bring joy to the people either of Carshalton or further. So we were extremely lucky to do that. That was probably our cheapest video we've ever done, and it was so much fun. And actually, if you watch it. If you go and watch that video, you probably would be surprised to know that that's the first day that a lot of the band met each other in person. We'd done certain. We'd come to the studio to record issue 1 because Leon lives up north. We've got someone in Nottingham, someone in Cambridge, so people were drip feeding in there, and we did that. And this was as much for doing a video. It was as much for like everyone to just like say, "Oh, hi, I'm such and such. Nice to meet you." Which is from that day up until now, I never knew what it's not just a band. It's like it's a community. It's a group of friends, and because there's so many of us, like there's 14 if you include the crew. It's just like a bunch of kids on a school trip. So yeah, maybe I'd recommend people go and watch that and just see if you can see any glimpse of it, not being the fact that we hadn't known each other for years and years. It was really, really nice to do.
I think that was a common occurrence after the kind of lockdowns and stuff, that people had started projects like yours and then suddenly are meeting up after all that time. It's amazing. I will be leaving all of the links to everything mentioned here in the description, including your website and, of course, how you can get tickets for the From the Makers of Quo convention in Minehead in September. And I just want to say thank you so much, Nick, for taking the time to talk to me.
No, thank you. Like I love talking. The problem is normally people have to shut me up. So thank you for accommodating my long-winded stories. And I tend to go off on one. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on. And I'm really looking forward for seeing you and everyone else at the Quo convention.